Hello everybody, I'm Micah and welcome back to Micah History. And to celebrate 25 subscribers, I'm going to be making a video that's a little different from my regular videos. So this video won't be a history video, but this will be an alternate history video. So I want to thank all the people who helped make this possible. This channel has been growing a lot more quickly than I expected, so I'm really happy about that. And so this video will be a video that my good friend Stuart proposed on my other channel, the Patrick Bros, which by the way you should check out, I think about a month ago. So here is, what if the Americas were never colonized? So the European conquest and colonization of the Americas was one of the most important events in history, obviously. It completely changed North and South America, affected Europe in a significant way, and also changed Africa in a lesser way. It helped turn Europe into the strongest and most important area of the world, and was a major reason for its eventual dominance of the world. But what if all of that never happened? Before I start this, the only way I find that this would be realistically possible would be if the Europeans simply had never found out about the Americas. There's no way that the Europeans would have explored two enormous continents with few people in most of it and with terrible technology and would have just left it alone, especially with Europe having a growing population. So to start this off, let's talk about the Americas, which was the area most affected by it. So without the Europeans, the Americas would look completely different. Without Europeans having ever arrived, European languages and religion would never have come. In terms of religion, as you can expect, the Americas would stay pagan, and also unsurprisingly, European languages such as Spanish, Portuguese, English, and French wouldn't be spoken. However, it wouldn't look that much different from what it was in 1400. Without European technology, the Americas would still have extremely primitive technology, and there would be practically no technological advances made during this alternate history in the Americas. Politically, at least in South America, not much would change, as the Inca Empire, which was the only country in South America, would still exist. However, it wouldn't expand, it would keep the same borders as it had before its conquest by Spain. The Inca Empire had already stopped expanding in 1486, before the Europeans arrived. Another reason it wouldn't expand was because it didn't have horses. With horses, it's much easier to travel much longer distances, and therefore armies in the old world were able to make huge empires by traveling long distances on horses. But without horses, it would be much harder to travel, so the Inca Empire was limited in how far it could expand. Meanwhile, in North America, Tenochtitlan would keep expanding as it had before its conquest by Spain. Tenochtitlan was part of the Aztec Empire, which was not actually an empire but a confederation of 3 countries, of which Tenochtitlan was the most important and largest. It slowly conquered the rest of Mesoamerica, or modern-day southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and western El Salvador. By 1760, it had conquered the Tarascan Empire, the only other important country in North America. And by 1720, Tenochtitlan would have conquered all of Mesoamerica and absorbed Texcoco and Tlacopan, the other countries in the Aztec Confederation. After this, it would stop expanding since no other civilization existed in North America outside of Mesoamerica. Also, it would have the same problem as the Inca Empire, since it would have no horses and so couldn't expand too far. The Inca Empire and Tenochtitlan would then survive for centuries, since there wouldn't be any country that would be able to conquer them, and they would be the only countries on their continents. However, all countries fall eventually, and both of them would collapse in the mid-20th century. However, I have no idea which countries would replace them, and how or why they would collapse. But by the mid-20th century, the rest of the world would have changed dramatically. Which brings us to the Old World. So Europe would still colonize the rest of the world, whether the Americas had been discovered or not, since they had already started exploring Africa and Asia in the 15th century. In 1492, Castile would be full of religious zeal, just as had been in our timeline, because the Reconquista would have been finished. However, instead of conquering the Americas, Castile would set its eyes on Africa, Asia, and Oceania. It won't start conquering immediately, however, as Africa and Asia wouldn't be as easy to conquer as the Americas, and Oceania would be too far away. However, by 1533, the Castilians would still have enthusiasm to spread Christianity, gain glory, and expand. So Castile would start by conquering Australia, which just like in our timeline, would have even less people and worse technology than the Americas. That year, it would conquer all of Western Australia, and encouraged by this success, would conquer all of Oceania by the next year. Now you might think this is exaggerated since Oceania is still huge, but it was really just a bunch of barely inhabited islands with terrible technology and was completely uncivilized. Also, the Castilians were able to conquer huge amounts of land in the Americas in just a couple of years. 1537, Castile would conquer the area around the Gulf of Guinea, or modern-day Southeast Nigeria, West Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Northwest Gabon. After those conquests, Castile would stop expanding for a while. In 1561, Portugal, realizing how big and successful Spain had become, by this time Castile would have become Spain, would also try conquering land. It'd conquer western Papua, Sulawesi, the Maluku Islands, Timor, and most of the Philippines. In 1565, it would then conquer North Sumatra and Malaya. Seeing Portugal expanding, Castile, which became Spain, would start worrying and start conquering land. Still full of zeal, Spain would conquer South Africa, South Namibia, most of Botswana, South Zimbabwe, and South Mozambique. Meanwhile, in West Africa, it would conquer the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, southwest Burkina Faso, and part of Mali that year. In 1569, Spain would conquer the western coast of Africa by conquering Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, the Gambia, western Mauritania, and southwest Morocco. 1571, it would expand by conquering the rest of Morocco, western Algeria, and northern Mauritania. In 1576, it would conquer more of western Algeria. However, Spain would start losing its zeal after this, and would also start declining, just as in our timeline. So Spain wouldn't conquer much after this. After this, Portugal would slowly start conquering the south coast of India during the 17th century, and in 1685 it would conquer most of Angola, North Namibia, and northwest Botswana. 1685, Spain would conquer Luzon. Now, you might expect Europe to be a lot more populated without so many Europeans having moved to the Americas. However, the Spanish and Portuguese would instead move to Africa and Asia. In Oceania, the Spanish would become the main ethnic group. In Africa, the Spanish would move to South Africa, where they would become the majority, but as they would go further inland, they would mix with the Africans. They would also mix with the Africans on the coast of their colonies, their other colonies. Portuguese would do the same thing in Angola as the Spanish would do in South Africa, with Europeans being the majority closer to the coast, while further inland they would mix with the Africans. However, in the rest of their colonies, they would mix with the natives close to the coast. So, although it had declined by this point, by 1750, Spain would still be the strongest country in Europe, followed by Portugal, since they were the only country that had colonies and so had global empires. However, that would change when Great Britain would win the 7 Years' War and conquer Luzon, making it the new strongest country. 1768, it would conquer northeast India and Bangladesh and become the most powerful country, especially after having won the 7 Years' War. It would conquer India in the same way as it did in our timeline. 1798, Great Britain would conquer western Borneo. Back in Europe, the French Revolution would still happen and Napoleon would still come to power. This means that France would still have invaded Spain in 1808. This would cause the same reactions in Spain colonies as what happened in the Americas in our timeline. Colonies would be split between those loyal to Spain, those supporting France, and those wanting independence. By 1825, all of Spain's colonies would become independent. The former Spanish colonies would be split up into several countries. The new countries would be very different ethnically. Oceania would be European, South Africa would be European and mixed race, Guinea, Coast, Senegal, and Morocco would be mixed race, West Sahara would be Middle Eastern, and Burkina Faso and Cameroon would be African. Meanwhile, the Portuguese king John VI, just as in our timeline, would have fled, but instead of going to Brazil, would have gone to Angola. He would create the new country of West Angola as a Portuguese vassal, but just as in our timeline, in 1822, son Pedro I would declare West Angola's full independence. However, Portugal would still keep the rest of its colonies. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And either the second part of this series about what if the Americas were never colonized, or the last video in this series about the US versus the UK will be coming out next. So don't forget to stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.